Did you know there was a dinosaur that may have been even deadlier than Tyrannosaurus rex? In the windswept plains of ancient Patagonia, a predator with knife-like teeth and lightning speed stalked the largest animals to ever walk the earth. Its name was Giganotosaurus, a forgotten giant that challenged the very idea of T-Rex as the undisputed king, unearthing a giant in Patagonia. The story of Giganotosaurus doesn't start in a lab or a museum. It starts on the dusty backroads of Patagonia, Argentina. Ruben Carolini, a local car mechanic who liked to look for fossils for fun, found what would become one of the most important fossil finds of the century in 1993. He saw pieces of big bones wearing away from the ground while exploring the Badlands near El Chocon. At first view, they seemed like pieces of petrified wood, which is common in that area, but Carolini could tell the difference between the soft surfaces of old bone because he had trained his eye by looking for fossils for years. That moment of recognition led to a finding that would change everything we thought we knew about how powerful the Tyrannosaurus rex was. Within months, professional paleontologists from the Museo Carmen Funes joined Carolini on site. They unearthed a partial skeleton that included skull fragments, vertebrae, pelvis bones, and leg elements. The remains were massive, even incomplete. They suggested an animal longer than 12 meters, with a skull nearly as long as a grown man. It was the kind of find that forces scientists to re-examine long-held assumptions. Up until then, the king of dinosaurs was universally thought to be T-Rex. Yet here, in the southern hemisphere, was a predator that may have been even bigger. The official description of the species was published in 1995 by paleontologists Rodolfo Correa and Leonardo Salgado. They named it Giganotosaurus carolini, giant southern lizard, with the species name honoring the man who found it. Naming a dinosaur after an amateur discoverer is rare, but Carolini's keen eye and dedication had made it possible. In fact, some paleontologists note that local enthusiasts in fossil-rich regions often play a crucial role in paleontology. Since vast territories remain unstudied, Giganotosaurus stands as proof of how science sometimes advances thanks to the persistence of ordinary people. The discovery site itself is a treasure trove. The Noken Basin, where the fossils were uncovered, was a lush environment during the late Cretaceous, about 98 million years ago. This region was part of Gondwana, the southern supercontinent. At the time, South America was home to some of the largest creatures ever to walk the earth, including Argentinosaurus, a sauropod that may have reached over 35 meters in length. The presence of such gigantic herbivores meant that the ecosystem could support equally massive predators. Giganotosaurus thrived in this environment, perfectly adapted to hunt giants in ways very different from its northern cousin T-Rex. A less well-known fact about the Giganotosaurus skeleton is how well it kept some important bones, especially skull parts. Even though they were not whole, these pieces helped scientists piece together the jaw structure, which showed that it was longer and thinner than Tyrannosaurus's deep, crushing head. This led to a very different way of hunting, which will be talked about in more detail in later parts. Even in the early stages of research, scientists knew this predator wasn't just a southern T-Rex. They knew it had its own unique genetic path. The impact of the discovery rippled through paleontology. Journals at the time emphasized that the size estimates, up to 13 meters long and weighing around 8 tons, made Giganotosaurus one of the largest theropods ever found. While debates continue over whether it truly exceeded T-Rex in size, what mattered most was that the long-standing narrative of T-Rex as the single apex of dinosaur predation had been broken. There were other kings living on different continents, ruling their own domains. When Giganotosaurus was first revealed to the public, it did not instantly gain the same fame as T-Rex or Velociraptor. For years, it was relatively unknown outside scientific circles. Part of this is due to timing. Its discovery came after much of the dinosaur boom in popular culture following Jurassic Park. Another factor is location. Fossils from South America often receive less international attention than those from North America or Europe. Yet in recent years, documentaries and films like Jurassic World Dominion have begun to bring Giganotosaurus into the spotlight, casting it as a challenger to the throne. People can see a full recreation of Giganotosaurus today at the Museo Carmen Funes in Neuquén. It stands tall above the crowds. When you see it, you can appreciate how important Carolini's finding was. In the search for skeletons in the desert, a man found a dinosaur predator that made us rethink how power worked in the time of the dinosaurs. It wasn't just about the bones. It was also about changing the story of prehistoric life in South America, a land where fossils still hold many mysteries waiting to be found. Bigger than T-Rex? Sorting the size debate. In the mid-1990s, when the bones of Giganotosaurus were first studied, the paleontologist community was filled with one important question. Was this dinosaur bigger than the huge Tyrannosaurus rex? It might sound like a silly argument to compare the sizes of extinct animals, but in science, these kinds of similarities are very important. They help us understand how predators hunted, how environments worked, and how evolution led to some body features being more useful. It's always been hard to decide what happened with Giganotosaurus, which is part of what makes it so interesting. The partial skeleton found in Patagonia contained key measurements, especially from the skull, femur, and vertebrae. Using these bones, paleontologists Rodolfo Coria and Leonardo Salgado estimated the full body length to be around 12.5 to 13 meters, or about 43 feet. That would make it at least as long as a T-Rex, and possibly longer. Weight estimates suggested 8 tons or more, though these numbers vary depending on the method used. Some studies place it closer to 6.5 tons, while others push it above 9 tons. These variations come from how researchers model missing bones, soft tissue, and posture, reminding us that reconstructing an extinct giant is as much art as science. T-Rex, by contrast, is generally accepted to have reached lengths of 12 meters and weights up to 9 tons, with the famous specimen Sue at the Field Museum representing the upper end. So, in sheer length, Giganotosaurus may edge ahead, but in mass and bulk, T-Rex remains the heavyweight champion. T-Rex's build was robust, a massive skull with bone-crushing teeth, thick neck muscles, and stocky legs. Giganotosaurus, while longer, had a more slender build, with a narrower skull and elongated limbs. In short, it was built for different strengths. A secret fact that lots of people don't know is that experts use the circumference of the femur to guess how much someone weighs. While most T-Rex thigh bones were longer, Giganotosaurus thigh bones were not as thick. It is thought that the Giganotosaurus was built for speed and reach, while the T-Rex was built for raw power, since its femur is smaller. Because of this, some paleontologists compare them to current predators, the Giganotosaurus to a lion, which is thin and quick, and the T-Rex to a grizzly bear, which is big and strong. They were both top shooters, but they did things in very different ways. The length of the head is another issue that people disagree on. The Giganotosaurus head was about 1.6 meters long, which is over 5 feet. It was one of the longest skulls of any theropod known to science. The average T-Rex head was about 1.5 meters long, but it was much deeper and stronger. The famous bite force of the T-Rex came from its deep jaws. The long, blade-like jaws of the Giganotosaurus, on the other hand, were better for cutting flesh than breaking bones. This difference shows that bigger doesn't always mean better when comparing things. For some types of shooting, a skull that is longer may not work as well. It's also worth noting that Giganotosaurus wasn't alone in this rivalry for size. Other Carcharodontosaurs, like Carcharodontosaurus in Africa and Mapusaurus in South America, reached similar lengths. Spinosaurus, another giant from North Africa, even exceeded both in total body length, though its semi-aquatic lifestyle made it a very different kind of predator. This shows that during the Cretaceous, there wasn't just one king. There were several regional giants, each adapted to dominate its own environment. Paleontologists continue to refine their methods to answer the size debate. CT scans, 3D modeling, and new discoveries of related species all help adjust our estimates. For instance, studies published in journals like Acta Paleontologica Polonica highlight that differences in fossil preservation and deformation can lead to inflated or deflated measurements. A bone crushed during fossilization may appear shorter than it was in life, while incomplete skeletons force scientists to fill in the blanks with comparisons to close relatives. That means the Giganotosaurus we imagine today could shift in the future as new techniques refine our understanding. The Carcharodontosaurid family tree. You can't just think of Giganotosaurus as a competitor to Tyrannosaurus if you want to understand it. You should put it in its own kingdom, the Carcharodontosauri. This is a family of huge carnivores that ruled the southern continents during the Cretaceous period. Most people don't know about this family tree, but paleontologists do. For them, it shows a secret world of predators that once ruled Gondwana and helps them figure out how Giganotosaurus grew to be such a unique giant. The name Carcharodontosaurid literally means shark-toothed lizard, inspired by the distinctive teeth these dinosaurs carried. Their teeth were long, blade-like and serrated, much like the teeth of a great white shark, designed to slice through flesh. This feature alone sets them apart from the bone-crunching tyrannosaurids of the north. While T-Rex jaws delivered catastrophic force, Carcharodontosaurs were specialists in cutting, inflicting deep wounds that bled their prey into submission. The group first rose to prominence in the early Cretaceous, spreading across Africa, South America, and parts of Europe. Giganotosaurus was one of the largest and most famous, but it had relatives worth knowing. Carcharodontosaurus saharicus, discovered in North Africa, reached similar lengths, possibly 13 to 14 meters. Its fossils were first described in the 1920s, but tragically, many original specimens were destroyed during World War II. Later discoveries in Morocco in the 1990s gave scientists another chance to study this beast, revealing a skull over 5 feet long. Closer to home, Giganotosaurus shared South America with Mapusaurus, a slightly smaller but still enormous predator discovered in the early 2000s. What made Mapusaurus special wasn't just its size, but the fact that dozens of individuals were found together in a single quarry. This raised the groundbreaking possibility that Carcharodontosaurs were social animals, capable of group hunting. If true, Giganotosaurus may have inherited the same behavior, a chilling thought when imagining multiple giants working together to bring down a sauropod. Another lesser-known cousin is Acrocanthosaurus, found in North America. While not as large as Giganotosaurus, it displayed tall neural spines along its back, forming a ridge or sail-like structure. This shows how diverse the family could be, with some members developing specialized features for display, thermoregulation, or muscle attachment. Although Acrocanthosaurus lived further north, its shared traits reveal how widespread the Carcharodontosaurs once were before tyrannosaurs became dominant in the late Cretaceous. An interesting fact about this family tree is that it shows how paleontologists can trace their roots back to allosaurids from the Jurassic period. Allosaurus and other dinosaurs like it were smaller and lighter hunters, but they set the pattern for how animals evolved. Over millions of years, as their food got bigger, their offspring got bigger too. Carcharodontosaurs had evolved into top hunters by the time of Giganotosaurus. They were able to kill the biggest land animals that had ever lived. With this idea in mind, we can see Giganotosaurus not as a unique giant, but as the most advanced member of a long bloodline that has been fine-tuned by natural selection. What made Carcharodontosaurs successful was their geographic opportunity. When Gondwana broke apart, isolation created unique evolutionary experiments. In North America, tyrannosaurids rose to power, while in South America and Africa, Carcharodontosaurs thrived. Each landmass became its own stage for predator-prey arms races. This explains why Giganotosaurus grew so large. It lived in an environment dominated by titanosaurs like Argentinosaurus and Andysaurus, herbivores so massive that only the largest predators stood a chance at hunting them. Bone microstructure studies give us another intriguing view. Paleontologists looked at the growth rings in the bones of Carcharodontosaurs and found that these animals grew very quickly as kids and got very big by the time they were teenagers. This way of growing is similar to how current predators, like lions, need to get big quickly in order to stay alive. It also gives us a clue about why Carcharodontosaurs might have grown to be as big as the biggest tyrannosaurs. Teeth built, like steak knives. Giganotosaurus was the flesh slicer of the south, while Tyrannosaurus rex was the bone crusher of the north. One thing that made this predator's teeth stand out was that they didn't follow the rules. Each tooth was long, bent, and lined with fine grooves. They were more like a very sharp steak knife than T-Rex's thick, cone-shaped teeth. This difference tells us a lot about how it hunts, what it eats, and the evolutionary forces in its environment. When paleontologists first reconstructed the skull of Giganotosaurus, they noticed how the teeth were relatively flat and blade-like. Measuring up to 20 centimeters, or about 8 inches, they weren't built to withstand crushing bone. Instead, they excelled at slicing through flesh and muscle. In this sense, Giganotosaurus had more in common with its Carcharodontosaurid relatives, literally the shark-toothed lizards, than with the tyrannosaurids. Each bite acted like a butcher's knife, carving deep wounds into prey, rather than snapping it apart. This difference in tooth design is crucial to understanding how Giganotosaurus hunted. T-Rex could bite down with a force of more than 8,000 pounds, splintering bones to extract marrow. Giganotosaurus, on the other hand, had a weaker bite, estimated at around half of T-Rex's, but what it lacked in brute force, it made up for in technique. Its long skull and narrow jaws were perfectly suited for a slash-and-retreat strategy. Paleontologists suggest that Giganotosaurus may have bitten into a sauropod, pulled back, and let blood loss and shock weaken the animal over time. One noteworthy piece of proof comes from looking at the wear patterns on its teeth under a microscope. Under a microscope, paleontologists saw striations that looked like they were made by slicing motions instead of breaking motions. This makes me think that Giganotosaurus might have shook its head from side to side after biting, which is similar to how Komodo dragons do today. This plan would have worked especially well against huge animals like the Argentinosaurus, which were too big and tall to be killed in one hit. Getting new teeth in Giganotosaurus is an additional fascinating detail that you might not know. Like many other theropods, it lost and gained teeth over the course of its life. Each tooth hole had many generations of teeth growing below the surface. With this conveyor belt system, broken teeth were quickly replaced, which is something that always happens when fighting animals that weigh several tons. Some studies even say that replacement might happen in just a few months. For a predator that relied on sharp edges, it was important to always have new blades on hand. Comparisons to sharks are more than just superficial. The fine serrations, known as denticles, are remarkably similar to those found on shark teeth. Each denticle acted like a tiny saw, making cuts cleaner and deeper. These microstructures are a hallmark of Carcharodontosaurids and are one reason scientists group them under the shark-toothed banner. The precision of these adaptations shows just how specialized Giganotosaurus had become for its environment. But tooth shape doesn't only reveal hunting methods, it also hints at dietary flexibility. While T-Rex may have been able to crush through armored prey like Triceratops, Giganotosaurus seems to have specialized in tackling soft-bodied giants. The titanosaurs that roamed South America lacked heavy armor, making them ideal targets for a predator with slicing teeth. Some researchers argue this specialization could explain why Carcharodontosaurs eventually declined. When sauropod populations fell, predators reliant on them may have struggled to adapt. Bite marks that have been kept on fossil bones are a striking way to compare things. Giganotosaurus bite marks are hard to find, but cousins of it, like Carcharodontosaurus, have left grooves and cuts in fossils of sauropods. The thin, slanted shape of their teeth lines up with these marks. It's not impossible that Giganotosaurus did the same thing, cutting long, deep holes in the skin of the world's biggest animals. From a biomechanical perspective, the tooth design also allowed Giganotosaurus to have a lighter skull. Without the need to reinforce for extreme crushing forces, its head could be longer and narrower. This reduced weight at the front of the body, improving balance and speed. In this way, its teeth weren't just tools for eating, they shaped the entire anatomy of the animal. Evolution molded its skeleton around its slicing strategy, hunting the giants of its time. big things lived in the world of Giganotosaurus. Tyrannosaurus rex lived in North America and mostly ate hadrosaurs and ceratopsians. In South America, Giganotosaurus's hunting grounds were ruled by titanosaurs, which were the world's biggest animals. The biggest of these was the Argentinosaurus, a sauropod that was thought to be over 30 meters long and more than 70 tons heavy. For a hunter like Giganotosaurus, this meant that it had to have a very different way of staying alive than predators that lived in the north. How could one carnivore, even a giant, bring down something the size of a 5-story building? The answer lies in hunting tactics. Paleontologists believe Giganotosaurus did not rely on sheer bite strength to kill quickly, but instead on persistent predation, striking, retreating, and returning. Its steak knife teeth allowed it to carve into flesh and muscle, causing blood loss and weakening its prey. This method echoes modern big cats like lions, which often harass and wound larger herbivores until exhaustion sets in. For Giganotosaurus, time and teamwork may have been the real weapons. The possibility of pack hunting adds an even more chilling dimension. While direct fossil evidence for Giganotosaurus hunting in groups is limited, its close relative, Mapusaurus, provides an important clue. The discovery of a Mapusaurus bone bed containing multiple individuals suggests that at least some Carcharodontosaurids lived and died together. This has led paleontologists to theorize that they may have coordinated hunts, particularly against enormous sauropods. If Giganotosaurus shared this behavior, imagine several 40-foot predators attacking in waves, each taking turns biting and retreating until a giant fell. The sheer image of coordinated giants working together is staggering and very possible. One aspect that is often forgotten about Giganotosaurus's food is how dangerous these plant-eating animals could be. The Argentinosaurus and its cousins were not helpless victims. A sauropod's tail, which was often over 10 meters long, could break bones with just one swipe. Paleontological models show that some titanosaur tails may have cracked like whips, making the tips move at speeds that would have killed the animals. This meant that Giganotosaurus had to be very careful as it came closer, aiming for weak spots like the legs, belly, or sides, while avoiding hitting hard. Because this was such a dangerous hunt, evolution preferred speed and cutting power over brute force that could break bones. Smaller prey would also have been part of Giganotosaurus's diet. The Cretaceous ecosystems of Patagonia hosted a variety of mid-sized herbivores such as iguanodonts, rebbachosaurids, and early ornithopods. These animals would have been easier targets, especially for younger Giganotosaurus individuals that had not yet reached their full size. This flexible diet helped the species survive in a competitive environment, though the real prize was always the colossal sauropods that dominated the landscape. Studies of Giganotosaurus's limb proportions hint at an ability to sustain relatively fast speeds for a predator of its size. Some biomechanical models estimate it could reach around 30 to 31 miles per hour, faster than T-Rex. Speed would have been critical in ambushes. Sauropods may have been slow-moving compared to smaller prey, but they lived in herds. Catching stragglers or young individuals required bursts of pursuit. Combined with its slicing jaws, this speed turned Giganotosaurus into a terrifying pursuer. Journal studies also suggest that Giganotosaurus's hunting strategy might have been adapted to exploit herd behavior. Titanosaurs moved in groups, and while this provided protection, it also created opportunities. Predators could target individuals separated from the herd during migrations or when crossing rivers. Fossil trackways in South America show sauropod herds on the move, hinting at the kind of environment Giganotosaurus may have shadowed. Like wolves following caribou, these predators may have trailed herds for miles, waiting for weakness to show. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of its predation is how inefficient yet effective it could be. Unlike T-Rex, which could crush bones and consume almost every part of its prey, Giganotosaurus may have wasted more meat. Its slicing teeth were perfect for stripping flesh, but less suited for gnawing down to the skeleton. This inefficiency, however, may have benefited the ecosystem. Leftover carcasses would have supported scavengers like smaller theropods, crocodilians, and early mammals. In this way, Giganotosaurus was not just a hunter, but a keystone species, shaping the survival of many organisms around it. Brain power, not just a brute. When people think of the Giganotosaurus, they usually picture a huge, brutish animal that hunted by using its muscles and teeth alone. But studying its brain shows a different story. Even though this predator was very big, it had a brain and sensory system that were incredibly complex. This gave it advantages that went beyond its size. Giganotosaurus wasn't just strong, it was also smart enough to be a skilled and dangerous killer. The first clue comes from endocasts, internal molds of the brain cavity created when paleontologists scanned skulls with CT imaging. These studies reveal that the brain of Giganotosaurus was proportionally small compared to its body, much like other large theropods. However, what matters is not the overall size, but the shape and development of specific region. In Giganotosaurus, the olfactory bulbs, responsible for smell, were relatively large. This suggests that scent played a critical role in its behavior, possibly helping it track prey over long distances or detect carcasses. In this way, it may have paralleled T-Rex, which is also known for its powerful sense of smell. The cerebellum is another unique place. It manages balance and coordination. This part of the brain was well developed in Giganotosaurus, which shows that even though it was very big, it had perfect control over its movements. Biomechanical tests have shown that it was faster and more agile than the T-Rex, so this makes sense. Imagine an attacker that is over 40 feet long, weighs 8 tons, and can still change its mind while it's walking. For such a huge animal, being able to move quickly would have been very important, especially when hunting huge sauropods with dangerous tails. Vision also seems to have been a strong suit. Although its skull was long and narrow, limiting the depth of binocular vision compared to T-Rex, Giganotosaurus still had forward-facing eyes. This gave it the ability to perceive depth well enough for tracking and striking moving prey. Recent comparisons suggest that while T-Rex may have had superior stereoscopic vision, Giganotosaurus likely compensated with other senses, creating a balanced predatory toolkit. A little-known fact that is often missed is that the structure of its inner ear can tell you about its lifestyle. CT pictures of the skulls of Carcharodontosaurs show long, half-circle-shaped canals that help the animals keep their balance and move their head. This suggests that the Giganotosaurus may have been good at shaking its head quickly, which fits with the way it cut food. When it bit, it could tear open cuts and do the most damage in seconds by shaking its head. That its brain and inner ears were built to allow it to do those things shows how deeply its hunting style was ingrained in its biology. The question of intelligence always arises when discussing dinosaurs. Was Giganotosaurus smarter than T-Rex? In terms of brain-to-body ratio, both were similar, though tyrannosaurs seem to edge ahead in overall encephalization. But intelligence in dinosaurs isn't measured by problem-solving, like in mammals. Instead, it's about specialized adaptations, coordination in hunts, sensory awareness, and the ability to respond to environmental challenges. Giganotosaurus, with its enhanced smell, strong coordination, and potential for group behavior, was intelligent in the way it needed to be. Not as a thinker, but as a strategist of survival. Evidence from its relatives also supports the idea of social complexity. Mapusaurus, found in Argentina, left behind a mass grave of multiple individuals. Some paleontologists interpret this as evidence of pack behavior, while others see it as a coincidence of preservation. If Carcharodontosaurs did engage in cooperative behavior, that would imply a level of social intelligence, recognizing group dynamics, coordinating movements, and tolerating other individuals around a shared food source. Even if Giganotosaurus wasn't a brainiac by human standards, it may have displayed predator smarts comparable to modern lions or wolves. One journal study points out that the brain cavity of Giganotosaurus had strong asymmetry, a feature linked in birds to lateralized behavior, essentially favoring one side of the brain for specific tasks. This could indicate that, like birds, it had specialized neurological functions, giving it efficiency in certain sensory or motor tasks. It's a reminder that even in the age of giants, evolution was shaping brains in subtle, complex ways. Speed over strength. People often talk about how strong the bites were and how they could break bones when they compare Giganotosaurus to Tyrannosaurus rex. On the other hand, Giganotosaurus was built on a very different idea. It was a hunter that valued speed and reach over strength. This animal's skeleton actually shows that it was designed to move quickly and attack with slicing motions, not to stand its ground and overwhelm its prey. Let's start with its body proportions. The skeleton of Giganotosaurus was long and relatively slender for a predator of its size. Its skull, though massive, was narrower and lighter than that of T-Rex. Its neck vertebrae were elongated, creating a head that projected forward like a blade rather than a hammer. Its femur and tibia, the thigh and shin bone, show a limb structure built for long strides. This combination of features reduced weight in the front of the body, allowing it to run more efficiently. Biomechanical modeling has given us fascinating insights. Using digital reconstructions, scientists have estimated that Giganotosaurus could run at speeds of up to 31 miles per hour, 50 kilometers per hour. This is astonishing for an animal that weighed several tons. By contrast, most estimates for T-Rex place its top speed at around 20 miles per hour, with some arguing it may not have been able to sprint at all without risking broken bone. That difference suggests that Giganotosaurus may have been able to overtake certain prey in open terrain, giving it an edge in the chase. However, speed in this case doesn't mean it was a sprinter like a cheetah. Giganotosaurus was more of a middle-distance runner, capable of maintaining fast but sustainable bursts over uneven ground. This fits well with its role as a hunter of sauropods. Unlike smaller herbivores, titanosaurs weren't built for running. They were slow-moving giants. Giganotosaurus didn't need explosive acceleration. It needed to be quick enough to approach, slash and retreat without being crushed under a massive tail or trampled underfoot. One obscure fact comes from the shape of the tail. Long chevrons and muscle attachments made the Giganotosaurus's tail vertebrae stiff. This tail served like a counterbalance when moving quickly, keeping the body stable as it ran. It's kind of like a built-in handle that lets an animal the size of a bus turn around without falling over. This change, along with the fact that it was lighter, may have made it easier to move around in open areas than the T-Rex. Speed also came at a cost: its bite force. With a narrower skull and less muscle mass in the jaw, Giganotosaurus could not generate the bone-crushing power of T-Rex. Instead, it relied on slicing teeth and repeated attacks. This trade-off highlights a fundamental difference in predatory strategies. T-Rex was the bruiser, Giganotosaurus the slasher. By emphasizing speed, Giganotosaurus positioned itself as a predator that could harass and weaken prey over time, rather than ending the fight in a single devastating bite. It's surprising how this looks a lot like some ecosystems today. In Africa, lions don't kill their food right away. Instead, they work together and use their strength to wear down big animals like buffalo. In North America, grizzly bears kill their prey by overwhelming them with strength. The T-Rex seems to represent the bear strategy, while the Giganotosaurus seems to represent the lion strategy. Both ways work, but they have very different body plans that come from the places where they evolved. Looking at bone stress tests shows another unusual thing. Computer models show that the Giganotosaurus's leg bones were made stronger so they could handle the pressure of running. Stress fractures in fossilized theropod bones show that moving quickly was dangerous, but Giganotosaurus's body structure shows that it could handle those forces better than bigger predators. This means that evolution pushed it towards speed on purpose so that it could survive, even if it meant giving up other traits. There's also the matter of prey behavior. Titanosaurs, like Argentinosaurus, may have been too large for even multiple predators to bring down quickly, but juveniles, stragglers, or sick individuals would have been vulnerable. Speed allowed Giganotosaurus to target these weaker members of the herd efficiently. Instead of taking suicidal risks against a healthy adult weighing over 70 tons, it could pursue those that lagged behind, striking swiftly before retreating to safety. Not all scientists agree on the upper limits of its speed. Some argue that the 31 mile per hour figure is too generous, suggesting that such a massive animal would face bone damage if it ran that fast. Others propose a more conservative range of 20 to 25 miles per hour. Still, even at those lower estimates, it would have been faster than T-Rex. reinforcing the idea that its strategy leaned heavily on mobility. The debate itself shows how much more there is to learn about these giants, especially since most of our conclusions are based on partial skeletons. The role of South America's geography. You have to look away from the skeleton and at the picture of Giganotosaurus's world to understand why it became one of the biggest predators ever. Geography wasn't just background scenery, it was the stage on which this dinosaur's development took place. We don't know what South America was like in the Middle Cretaceous. It was a piece of Gondwana, a supercontinent that was breaking up into separate landmasses. That isolation made ecosystems that were all their own, and giants did very well in those environments. Around 100 million years ago, South America was separating from Africa. This split formed the South Atlantic Ocean and locked species into different evolutionary paths. North America, on the other hand, was connected to Asia at times, allowing for exchanges of species that led to the rise of tyrannosaurids. In South America, the isolation meant that tyrannosaurs never arrived. Instead, another group, Carcharodontosaurid, rose to the top. This geographic separation explains why Giganotosaurus and T-Rex never met. Each was king of its own domain, shaped by the circumstances of its continent. The Neuquén Basin in Patagonia, where Giganotosaurus fossils were discovered, was a fertile plain during the Cretaceous. Rivers wound through lowland, floodplains supported vast forests, and volcanic activity enriched the soil. The climate was warm and humid, creating abundant vegetation. That vegetation, in turn, fed colossal sauropods like Argentinosaurus, Andysaurus, and Patagoniosaurus, some of the largest animals ever to live. Wherever giant herbivores exist, predators large enough to challenge them eventually evolve. Geography made sure of that. It's remarkable to see how different the animals were in South America compared to North America. Carcharodontosaurs like Giganotosaurus and abelisaurids like Carnotaurus would have filled the natural gaps left by tyrannosaurs. Abelisaurids were shorter, stockier hunters that mainly ate animals that were about the size of humans. Giganotosaurus, on the other hand, changed over time to take advantage of the huge groups of sauropods. The different kinds of predators show how separation led to experiments in evolution. South America was like an experiment in evolution, and it produced giants that have never been seen before. South America's isolation also kept some other groups from competing, which is a secret gem that is often missed. To give you an example, Spinosaurids ruled North Africa, but they didn't seem to move as far into South America. Giganotosaurus was able to take these niches without any competition from semi-aquatic species. In this way, location wasn't just about physical obstacles, it was also about chances. When one type of animal went away, it made room for another to grow and become more specialized. The Andes Mountains, which today dominate western South America, were only just beginning to form during Giganotosaurus's time. Instead of towering peaks, the region was a series of lowlands and volcanic highlands. These landscapes created floodplains where herds of sauropods could roam. Fossil trackways from Argentina show sauropods traveling in groups, likely migrating across vast distances in search of food and water. For a predator like Giganotosaurus, this geography provided a consistent buffet of prey. Seasonal changes may have even concentrated herds into certain valleys, making ambushes easier. South America's rivers also played a role. Fossil evidence shows that large crocodiliforms, some over 20 feet long, shared these environments. These giant crocodiles were dangerous to smaller dinosaurs, but no match for Giganotosaurus. Instead, they coexisted, each occupying its own ecological niche. The rivers would have acted as natural highways for herbivores, and predators like Giganotosaurus likely shadowed these migration routes, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. The isolation of South America also explains why so many of its dinosaurs remained unique until their extinction. Titanosaurs like Argentinosaurus never spread to North America, and Tyrannosaurids never spread south. By the time the continents reconnected via the Isthmus of Panama, tens of millions of years later, the age of dinosaurs had long ended. During the Cretaceous, the world was still fragmented, and that fragmentation meant regional giants evolved independently. Comparisons of fossil variety show an interesting point. In North America during the late Cretaceous, environments often had a mix of big and small predators, with tyrannosaurs being the biggest and best. In South America, environments were more split into two groups, Large predators, like Giganotosaurus, lived on one end, and smaller animals called abelisaurids lived on the other. This gap shows that location affects not only size, but also the balance between predators and prey. Giant sauropods made it easier for giant predators to evolve, and Giganotosaurus was the right animal to meet that need. Mapusaurus and the pack hunting hypothesis. It was clear that the Giganotosaurus bones found in Patagonia belonged to a big game hunter as soon as they were found. But when Mapusaurus, another giant dinosaur, was found in the early 2000s, it changed things. It suggested that these hunters might not have been alone, but may have worked together as a group. What if this is true? It would change how we think about how some of the biggest animals in history hunted. Mapusaurus rose to scientific fame when a massive bone bed was uncovered at the Huincul Formation in Argentina, the very same geologic layer that had produced Giganotosaurus. The excavation, led by paleontologist Rodolfo Coria, revealed the remains of at least 7 individuals, ranging from juveniles to adult. The sheer number of skeletons in one place forced paleontologists to ask, were these dinosaurs hunting together, living in social groups, or simply dying in the same place at different times? This discovery sparked the pack hunting hypothesis, a bold idea suggesting that large Carcharodontosaurids like Mapusaurus, and by extension Giganotosaurus, may have coordinated hunts, especially against giant sauropods. If multiple Mapusaurus individuals worked together, they could have taken down prey as massive as Argentinosaurus. Imagine the scene. Several 30-foot predators circling a herd, slashing at flanks and forcing the massive herbivores into chaos. Even if they didn't kill outright, the accumulated wounds and stress could have been fatal. Skeptics, however, point out that fossil bone beds don't always mean social behavior. Sometimes animals die in the same spot due to drought, floods, or volcanic activity. Without direct fossil evidence of coordinated hunting, like trackways showing multiple predators working together against prey, we can't be certain. Still, the possibility remains tantalizing, especially since modern predators often leave behind similar clues of social living. Microstructure of bones is a concealed fact that supports this idea. Researchers who looked at Mapusaurus fossils found that the people in the bone bed were of a range of ages, from teenagers to fully grown adults. This variety suggests that there may have been age-structured groups where younger hunters learned from older, more experienced ones. Animals like lions, wolves, and even crocodiles use group behaviours in modern environments. This shows that cooperation can develop more than once when the conditions are right. Why not in huge dinosaurs? If Giganotosaurus shared this behaviour, it changes our image of the predator entirely. Alone, it could wound and harass titanosaurs, but with a group, it could bring down giants systematically. Each predator might have played a role, juveniles chasing and distracting, adults inflicting deeper wounds, and together overwhelming prey that no single hunter could defeat. For an animal living in an environment dominated by herds of enormous sauropods, group hunting may not have been just an advantage, it may have been a necessity. The idea of pack hunting aligns with Giganotosaurus's tooth design. Its slicing, steak knife-like teeth weren't for bone crushing, but for repeated slashes. A single predator might inflict wounds too shallow to kill quickly, but multiple predators working together could deliver cumulative trauma. This strategy parallels modern predators like hyenas, which use repeated bites and endurance to bleed down prey over time. Even if Mapusaurus or Giganotosaurus didn't always hunt in coordinated packs, living in groups could have helped them dominate carcasses. A single predator might have been challenged by crocodilians or other theropods, but a group could guard a kill and consume it fully. This communal feeding behaviour, seen in Komodo dragons and vultures today, would have been an effective survival strategy in Patagonia's competitive ecosystems. There's also the matter of risk. Hunting multi-ton prey was dangerous. Fossil evidence of healed injuries in theropods shows they frequently broke bones or suffered deep wounds. Hunting in groups would have spread out the risk, increasing survival chances for each individual. In this sense, cooperation may not have been about strategy, but about survival economics. More hunters meant less risk per individual. Still, being wary is still important. Not all paleontologists agree with the idea of pack hunting. Some people say that Carcharodontosaurids didn't have the mental complexity to cooperate like birds or mammals do. Instead, they think that these hunters might have been able to get along at the bodies, like Komodo dragons do. According to this theory, Mappasaurus didn't really hunt together. Instead, they ate in groups when there was food available. Still, the fact that they lived together without fighting all the time shows a level of social tolerance that isn't common in big predators. Bite force mystery. As people think about dinosaur fights, the first thing that comes to mind is who had the strongest bite. The Tyrannosaurus rex is famous for having teeth that could break bones. It had the strongest bite of any land animal ever. But Giganotosaurus, despite being very big, has a very different story to tell. When we think about how it hunted and lived, we have to rethink how its bite force was so weak for a predator that big. Let's begin with the numbers. Estimates for Giganotosaurus's bite force range from 6,000 to 8,000 newtons, which is formidable but far below T-Rex, whose bite exceeded 35,000 to 57,000 newtons. In simple terms, Giganotosaurus could bite as hard as a large modern crocodile, but it was no match for the pulverizing power of its northern cousin. This gap raises a question. How could a predator that wasn't capable of crushing bones still dominate some of the largest animals that ever lived? The answer lies in design. Giganotosaurus's skull was long, low and narrow, stretching over 1.6 meters in length. This structure gave it reach, but it sacrificed depth and reinforcement. T-Rex's skull was short and blocky, packed with muscles that gave it the power to splinter bone. Giganotosaurus, in contrast, had lighter skull bones and reduced stress-bearing structures. It simply wasn't built for brute force chomping. Instead, its skull worked like a pair of long shears, perfect for slicing but not for crushing. Research that looks at tooth wear and bone marks is an unseen gem. The T-Rex left bite marks on bones that show it chewed through meat, but Giganotosaurus skeletons don't show any clear signs of bone-crunching behavior. Instead, its teeth have tiny scratches that look like they could cut through skin. This shows that Giganotosaurus ate in a different way, by removing the meat from its prey and leaving the bones behind instead of eating everything. So how did it make up for the weaker bite? One theory is the bite and shake strategy. After clamping onto a sauropod, Giganotosaurus may have used its powerful neck muscles to wrench its head side to side, widening wounds and tearing out chunks of flesh. Studies of its cervical vertebrae show that its neck was muscular and flexible, supporting this kind of attack. Instead of a single devastating bite, it relied on repeated slashes that slowly incapacitated prey. Giganotosaurus lived alongside massive titanosaurs like Argentinosaurus, which didn't have the heavy armor of ankylosaurs or the horned defenses of ceratopsians. This meant it didn't need bone-crushing teeth to access food. Its prey was essentially a walking mountain of muscle, blood, and fat. The predator's job was simply to cause enough trauma to bring it down. And for that, slicing teeth was more than enough. The weaker bite force may have given Giganotosaurus an unexpected advantage. A lighter skull reduced weight on the front of its body, improving balance and speed. Combined with its long legs, this allowed it to chase and harass prey more effectively. Where T-Rex planted itself and delivered catastrophic bites, Giganotosaurus could keep moving, darting in and out of danger zones. The trade-off between bite strength and mobility reflects two different evolutionary solutions to the same problem: how to take down giants. The bite force mystery also extends to feeding behavior. Some paleontologists suggest that Giganotosaurus may have relied on scavenging opportunities more than we realize. With its strong sense of smell, it could have detected carcasses from long distances. In this role, it wouldn't need to crack bones, only strip away flesh. This doesn't mean it was a pure scavenger, but rather that it had a flexible strategy: hunt when possible, scavenge when needed. Modern analogues help us understand this better. Wolves don't have crushing bites compared to big cats, yet they bring down enormous prey by teamwork and repeated attacks. Komodo dragons, despite not being as strong as crocodiles, use serrated teeth and strategic biting to weaken much larger prey. Giganotosaurus may have functioned in a similar way, relying on persistence rather than instant kill power. Growth rings in fossils. It's easy to imagine dinosaurs like the Giganotosaurus as being instantly huge, like they were born as monsters and grew steadily until they hit their full size. But the truth is a lot more complicated than that. Paleontologists studying Giganotosaurus bones have found tiny clues about how this predator grew, how quickly it reached adulthood, and even how it lived its daily life. There is a secret date in fossilized bones called growth rings that holds the key. Just as trees record annual growth with rings, dinosaur bones do the same. When thin slices of fossilized Giganotosaurus bones are examined under a microscope, paleontologists can see alternating bands of dense and less dense bone tissue. These bands reflect seasonal changes in growth rates. During times of plenty, the dinosaur grew rapidly, laying down thick layers. During harsher seasons, growth slowed, producing thinner, darker bands. Each cycle represents a year, allowing scientists to estimate the age of the individual at death. In Giganotosaurus, these growth rings reveal an extraordinary story. Studies show that young individuals grew at astonishing speeds, sometimes gaining hundreds of pounds per year. By their teenage years, they were already formidable predators, standing taller than a man and stretching longer than a bus. This growth spurt strategy is similar to that of modern large mammals, like elephants and whales, which must reach a competitive size quickly to survive in their environments. For a predator living alongside Argentinosaurus, growing fast wasn't optional, it was essential. A curious aspect about this study that was not widely known is that once Giganotosaurus hit adulthood, it grew much less quickly. The growth rings get thinner after about 20 years, which means the animal's body has become stable. At this point, it had already grown to a huge size, and its energy was now being used to keep its size, heal wounds, and reproduce. This growth peak is similar to what other giant theropods have shown. It shows that even though they were different, the biology of growth followed the same rules over time. Growth rings also shed light on metabolism. The rapid growth rate suggests that Giganotosaurus had a metabolism much higher than modern reptiles. It wasn't fully warm-blooded like mammals, but it wasn't cold-blooded either. Instead, it likely fell into a middle category called mesothermy, where body temperature and growth were partly regulated internally, but also influenced by the environment. This metabolic sweet spot explains how Giganotosaurus could grow so quickly without the extreme energy demands of a mammal its size. Growth ring studies also highlight variation among individuals. Some Giganotosaurus fossils show evidence of stunted growth or slowed development, possibly due to environmental stress like droughts or food shortages. Others show uninterrupted rapid growth, indicating that these predators thrived when prey was abundant. In this way, fossil bones are like diaries, recording not just age, but also the challenges of survival in Cretaceous Patagonia. Bone histology has shown how injuries and mending happen, which is another noteworthy aspect. Some Giganotosaurus bones have thickened rings around fractures, which shows that the animal lived through serious damage long enough for its body to heal itself. These healed wounds show that even the most powerful predators were always in danger. Whether they were hunting colossal sauropods, fighting other dinosaurs, or just getting around on rough ground, they were strong and flexible because they lived long enough for their bones to heal. Comparisons with related species, such as Maposaurus and Carcharodontosaurus, show similar growth patterns. This suggests that rapid adolescent growth was a family trait among Carcharodontosaurids. By contrast, tyrannosaurs followed a slightly different trajectory, with an even sharper adolescent growth spurt that catapulted them into apex predator status relatively late in life. These subtle differences remind us that giant predators weren't all the same. Each lineage evolved distinct paths to achieve dominance. The fact that these growth studies are very careful is something that not many people know. Paleontologists have to cut into rare fossil bones in order to study rings. This is a process that requires them to balance scientific value with preservation. Because of this, not every example can be studied, and each slice is a choice that can't be changed. But the information gathered is priceless. It shows not only the biology of a single person, but also how a whole group stays alive. The apex predator arms race. Predators don't change on their own. They change because of the things around them, like the animals they hunt, the other animals they have to deal with, and the places they live. In the middle, Cretaceous Giganotosaurus lived in South America. There, it was in the middle of one of the most intense arms races between predators and prey in Earth's history. Not only was it a competition of size, but also of how to stay alive, which made both the hunter and the hunted into record-breaking giants. At the center of this arms race were the Tyrannosaurs, Argentinosaurus, Andysaurus, Patagonia, and other long-necked sauropods that reached lengths of 30 to 35 meters. These were the largest land animals ever to exist, and they represented both opportunity and challenge. For Giganotosaurus, they were a walking food source on a scale unmatched anywhere else on Earth. But they were also dangerous. A fully grown Argentinosaurus could weigh more than 70 tons, making it nearly invulnerable to a single predator. To survive, Giganotosaurus had to evolve adaptations not for crushing, but for wounding and persistence, turning hunts into prolonged battles. But Giganotosaurus wasn't the only giant predator in the region. Fossil evidence shows that South America hosted a diverse cast of carnivores. Abelisaurids, like Carcharodontosaurid, thrived on medium-sized prey, their shorter skulls and stocky builds perfect for quick strikes. Large crocodiliforms lurked in rivers and lakes, some growing longer than buses. Mapusaurus, a close relative, may even have competed directly with Giganotosaurus for food, possibly overlapping in range and prey preference. Each predator carved out its niche, creating a dynamic ecosystem where dominance was never absolute. This diversity meant constant competition. If a Giganotosaurus succeeded in wounding a sauropod, it might still face rivals arriving to claim the kill. Just as lions today must fend off hyenas, Giganotosaurus likely had to defend carcasses against other predators. This may explain why pack hunting or social tolerance was an advantage. Groups could dominate kills, while solitary hunters risked losing meals to competitors. The arms race wasn't only between predators and prey, but also among the prey themselves. Titanosaurs weren't defenseless. Their tails could be wielded like whips, delivering blows strong enough to break bones. Some species may have traveled in tightly knit herds, forming defensive circles around juveniles. Fossil trackways from Patagonia show herd movement patterns, suggesting these giants coordinated in groups much like elephants do today. This forced predators to become smarter and faster, waiting for stragglers or juveniles rather than charging into the center of a herd. The environment is another part of this arms race that is often neglected. A lot of fossils were found in the Neuquén Basin, which was a floodplain environment where rivers moved and the seasons changed. When there was plenty, both sauropods and hunters did well, but during harsher seasons, prey may not have been as common, making the fight stronger. According to paleontologists who study bone beds, predators may have had to come closer to each other because of changes in the environment, which can sometimes cause mass deaths. The bone bed of the Mapusaurus, for instance, could stand for a drought-stricken gathering that ended in disaster. The arms race also extended to anatomy. Giganotosaurus's slicing teeth, lightweight skull, and speed reflect evolutionary responses to the challenges posed by titanosaurs. Meanwhile, titanosaurs developed massive size as both a defense and a survival strategy. This back-and-forth escalation mirrors modern ecological battles. Antelopes evolved to run faster, and cheetahs evolved to chase them down. Porcupines develop quills, and predators adapt new tactics to avoid them. In Patagonia, the stakes were simply magnified to titanic proportions. What's truly intriguing is how different regional arms races led to very different top predators around the world. T-Rex in North America got jaws that could break bones in order to eat Triceratops and Ankylosaurus, which were armoured food. Spinosaurus learned to live in water and ate fish and smaller dinosaurs in Africa. In South America, Giganotosaurus was best at slashing attacks that were good for big animals without armour. The rules of war in each environment were set by geography, climate, and the availability of food. This showed that there was never a single way to become the top predator. Some paleontologists argue that this evolutionary arms race may also explain why Carcharodontosaurids, including Giganotosaurus, eventually declined. As titanosaurs evolved new strategies, such as increased herd protection or sheer gigantism, predators may have reached their practical limits. At a certain point, even a 40-foot carnivore couldn't efficiently hunt a 70-ton prey animal. This imbalance could have contributed to their disappearance around 97 million years ago, long before the asteroid struck. Fossil evidence of injury and survival. Scars on bones can sometimes write stories. For Giganotosaurus, fossils of wounds and healing show that even the most dangerous and violent hunters lived dangerous lives. Hunting animals that weighed several tons wasn't just hard, it was dangerous. Huge sauropods could break bones, cut you deeply, or do even worse every time you hit one. But some Giganotosaurus fossils show that these hunters didn't just get hurt, they also lived through it, which shows how strong and flexible they were. Paleontologists studying the skeletons of Carcharodontosaurids, including Giganotosaurus and its relatives, have found signs of healed fractures and abnormal bone growth. These include thickened ribs, partially fused vertebrae, and distorted limb bones. Such features indicate that individuals sustained serious trauma during life, but lived long enough for their bodies to repair. Healing in a reptilian metabolism is often slower than in mammals, which makes these survival stories even more remarkable. It suggests that these predators could withstand weeks or months of reduced mobility and still secure enough food to recover. What this evidence shows about hunting style is something that is often dismissed. A lot of the injuries are in the ribs and limbs, which makes sense since the animals probably hit the victims with their tails or stepped on them. One whip crack from an Argentinosaurus tail could have broken bones, and fossil studies show that sauropod tails were more dangerous than most people think. The fact that Giganotosaurus fossils from these areas show healed wounds from fights with prey suggests that these animals often and dangerously face their prey directly. Other injuries appear to be the result of intraspecific combat, fights with other Giganotosaurus individuals. Predators often clash over territory, dominance, or access to carcasses, and dinosaurs were no exception. Bite marks on skulls and jaws of related theropods suggest face-biting contests, much like those seen in modern crocodiles and big cats. If Giganotosaurus engaged in similar behaviour, rivalries between individuals may have been intense, leaving behind scars etched into bone. In a unique instance, abnormal growth patterns in the ribs of Carcharodontosaurids were seen as signs of infection after they were hurt. People sometimes got these infections long enough for their bones to heal, even though they could be very painful. It shows that they are biologically tough because they can handle the physical stress of the hunt and also fight off sickness. It gives us a picture of a top predator that was more than just strong and fast. It was also a survivor that could handle many difficulties. Comparisons with Tyrannosaur fossils add another layer to the story. T-Rex skeletons frequently show evidence of healed injuries, including crushed vertebrae and broken ribs, likely from battles with armored prey like Triceratops. In contrast, Giganotosaurus's injuries seem more consistent with the dangers of confronting enormous but unarmored sauropods. This difference highlights how the prey they hunted directly shaped the risks they faced. T-Rex fought short, brutal battles against horned herbivores, while Giganotosaurus endured prolonged high-stakes encounters with giants capable of delivering devastating counterattacks. Healed injuries also raise questions about behavior and survival strategies. How did a wounded Giganotosaurus hunt? Did it slow down and scavenge more often, using its keen sense of smell to locate carcasses? Or, if pack hunting theories are correct, did injured individuals rely on group cooperation to feed while they healed. In modern ecosystems, predators like wolves and lions often support injured members, whether intentionally or indirectly. It's possible that similar dynamics existed among Carcharodontosaurids, especially if group behavior played a role in their hunting strategies. When researchers slice into injured bones, they often find dense remodeling tissue, indicating extended survival after trauma. This suggests that some individuals lived for years with significant injuries, adapting their hunting style to cope. Such evidence challenges the stereotype of dinosaurs as fragile or short-lived. In reality, these animals demonstrated remarkable durability, surviving repeated accidents and attacks in one of the harshest ecosystems imaginable. Climate and vegetation, the world of Giganotosaurus. You can't just look at Giganotosaurus's bones to understand it, you have to live in its world. At the middle of the Cretaceous period, about 98 million years ago, Patagonia was not the cold, windy place it is today. It was instead warm, wet, and green. And the land was full of rivers, woods, and floodplains. The biggest dinosaurs could live in this lush setting, and the Giganotosaurus evolved to become their main predator. The climate of mid-Cretaceous South America was dominated by high global temperatures. Studies of ancient soils and fossilized plant matter reveal that carbon dioxide levels were far higher than today, creating a greenhouse world. Average temperatures in Patagonia may have been more than 10 degrees Celsius warmer, with mild winters and long growing seasons. These conditions allowed vegetation to grow rapidly, supporting enormous herbivore populations. Without this abundance of plants, titanosaurs like Argentinosaurus, weighing 70 tons or more, could never have survived. Vegetation in this period was diverse. Fossil pollen and plant remains show that conifers such as Araucaria and Podocarpus dominated the forests. These towering evergreens provided shade and food for herbivores. Beneath them grew cycads, ferns, and horsetails, carpeting the floodplains. Angiosperms, flowering plants, were also beginning to spread during this era. Though not yet dominant, their arrival added new food sources and changed the dynamics of herbivory. For sauropods, this botanical revolution meant more options. For predators like Giganotosaurus, it meant healthier, more abundant prey. The rivers and wetlands of the Neuquén Basin also played a critical role. Seasonal flooding deposited nutrient-rich soils, fueling bursts of plant growth. Fossil evidence of aquatic plants and invertebrates suggests that wetlands were common, providing habitats for smaller dinosaurs, crocodilians, and fish. These ecosystems acted as gathering points, where herds of titanosaurs moved to drink and graze. For Giganotosaurus, such locations would have been prime hunting grounds, natural choke points where prey became concentrated. Fossilized wood is an undiscovered treasure in this story. In Patagonia, petrified woods still have tree stems that are more than a meter wide. These are reminders of the huge conifers that used to cover the land with their leaves. These woods give us a hint of how useful the land was. In fact, studies of fossil plants show that some parts of Patagonia may have looked like subtropical woods today, with thick, green plants that go on for miles. Imagine a Giganotosaurus sneaking through such a forest, its huge body moving between trees that were as big as it was. The climate also influenced the life cycles of predators and prey. Seasonal variation, wet and dry periods, likely forced migrations of sauropod herds. Trackways discovered in Argentina show long lines of sauropods travelling together, perhaps in search of food or water. For Giganotosaurus, these migrations were opportunities. Just as lions follow wildebeest in Africa today, Giganotosaurus may have shadowed titanosaur herds across the plains, waiting for moments of weakness to strike. It's important to note that this warm, lush world also has its dangers. Volcanic activity was common in the Neuquén Basin, and ash layers preserved in the rock record suggest periodic eruptions. These events could have temporarily devastated vegetation, causing food shortages and stressing herbivore populations. For predators like Giganotosaurus, Such disruptions may have meant alternating cycles of feast and famine, times of abundance followed by desperate struggles for survival. An additional factor that is often forgotten is how the surroundings affected competition between animals. Smaller theropods and abelisaurids did best in forests or along rivers, but Giganotosaurus ruled open floodplains where it could use its speed to its benefit. This division of areas reduced direct fighting, which let different predator species live together. An amazing variety of carnivores could live in an environment with lots of plants and animals to eat. Cultural impact: the Giga versus T-Rex rivalry. When Giganotosaurus was first described in 1995, paleontologists knew it was one of the biggest dinosaurs that ate meat that had ever been found. But outside of science, not many people knew about it for years. People already thought of Tyrannosaurus rex as the king of dinosaurs and the ultimate killer. Not only did T-Rex rule the Cretaceous in our studies for decades, he also ruled movies, toys and videos. Giganotosaurus, on the other hand, was just a shadow in the background. When it was reported that this South American monster might have been longer than the T-Rex, things started to change. All of a sudden, a new competition began, one that still influences arguments, films and movies today. The idea of a T-Rex challenger immediately attracted attention because humans love hierarchies. We want to know who's the biggest, the strongest, the deadliest. For over a century, T-Rex had been uncontested. But Giganotosaurus shattered that narrative. Headlines in the 1990s declared it the dinosaur that dethroned T-Rex, sparking public fascination. Although paleontologists were quick to clarify that size depends on length versus mass, the cultural impact was already set. Giganotosaurus was now a rival king. Documentaries such as When Dinosaurs Roamed America and Dinosaur Planet began to feature Giganotosaurus, often dramatizing it in deadly hunts against Argentinosaurus. It was depicted as sleek, fast and terrifying, a contrast to the bulky power of the T-Rex. This framing turned it into a cinematic foil, the southern blade versus the northern hammer. Even though most of the general public had never heard of Carcharodontosaurids before, the drama of the rivalry made the name stick. The rivalry reached mainstream audiences when Giganotosaurus appeared in Jurassic World Dominion, 2022. Marketed as bigger than T-Rex, it became the central antagonist dinosaur of the film. The movie exaggerated its features for dramatic effect, giving it jagged spines and a more monstrous look. But the core idea was clear. This was the dinosaur powerful enough to challenge the cultural throne of T-Rex. While scientists rolled their eyes at inaccuracies, the film gave Giganotosaurus the fame it had lacked for nearly 3 decades. This cultural framing often overshadows the actual science. While debates rage in popular media about which dinosaur would win in a fight, paleontologists emphasize that the two never coexisted. T-Rex lived in North America about 66 million years ago, while Giganotosaurus lived in South America roughly 98 million years ago. They were separated not just by geography, but by over 30 million years of time. The battle is purely a human invention, yet it's one that has proven remarkably effective in keeping public interest alive. Another cool thing about this culture story that you might not know is that the Giganotosaurus has become a national symbol in Argentina. Its fossils are kept in the Museo Carmen Funes, which also has a large recreation on show. People in the area are happy about finding it because it shows that South America has produced one of the most powerful animals in Earth's past. Giganotosaurus isn't just a dinosaur in this way. It's also a culture ambassador for Patagonia and Argentine geology. The cultural rivalry has also influenced how documentaries present paleontology. Programs often stage who would win battles, dramatizing hypothetical encounters. While this is not scientifically accurate, it has been useful for engaging audiences. By pitting Giganotosaurus against T-Rex, shows draw viewers into deeper discussions about anatomy, ecology, and evolution. In this sense, the rivalry is not just entertainment, it's a gateway to education. Of course, the danger is oversimplification. Giganotosaurus was not simply a bigger T-Rex. It had different anatomy, hunting strategies, and ecological roles. By reducing it to a rival, we risk missing its uniqueness. Yet even this distortion underscores an important point. Paleontology is not only about fossils, but also about storytelling. Dinosaurs become cultural icons because we project narratives onto them. T-Rex embodies brute power. Giganotosaurus now embodies the challenger, the reminder that even kings can be contested. Modern technology, CT scans and 3D reconstructions. For most of the 20th century, paleontologists used measuring tape, glue and expert guesses to put dinosaurs back together again. But for the hunter Giganotosaurus, whose bones have only been found in pieces, modern science has been nothing short of revolutionary. Scientists have used CT scans, 3D models and computer simulations to look inside its bones, put together pieces that are missing, and even test how it might have moved and attacked. Tech has brought a dinosaur back to life in many ways. Without it, it might still be a puzzle of broken bones. The most significant breakthroughs have come from CT scanning, or computed tomography. By running fossilized bones through high-resolution scanners, paleontologists can generate detailed images of their internal structures without damaging them. In Giganotosaurus, CT scans of its skull fragments revealed not just bone thickness, but also cavities where muscles and nerves once sat. These scans allow researchers to digitally rebuild the skull, estimating bite mechanics, jaw strength, and sensory adaptations. For example, CT imaging confirmed that Giganotosaurus had elongated olfactory bulbs, supporting the theory that it relied heavily on smell. CT scans also illuminate brain case anatomy. Endocasts, digital molds of the space once occupied by the brain, have shown that Giganotosaurus's cerebellum was well developed, suggesting excellent balance and coordination. The semicircular canals of its inner ear revealed how it could stabilize its gaze and control head movements, a feature consistent with the bite and shake hunting strategy hypothesized for Carcharodontosaurids. Without these scans, such details would remain hidden inside stone. But technology doesn't stop at the microscopic. Advances in 3D reconstruction allow scientists to rebuild Giganotosaurus's entire skeleton digitally. By scanning individual bones and comparing them to relatives, researchers can fill in missing pieces with remarkable accuracy. These 3D models can then be animated to test walking and running mechanics. Biomechanical studies using such models suggest that Giganotosaurus was faster than T-Rex, with longer strides and a lighter frame that gave it superior pursuit abilities. Finite element analysis, FEA, a method taken from engineering, is used by scientists to test the power of structures. This is a secret gem in the process. Digitally stressing a rebuilt skull or limb bone lets researchers model the forces that an animal would feel when it bites, runs, or hits its prey. FEA tests on the Giganotosaurus have shown that its head was designed to slice rather than crush, which backs up what we knew from looking at its teeth. It has also shown weak spots where stress would build up, which explains why its bite force was smaller than that of a T-Rex. Technology has also enhanced how we visualize Giganotosaurus in museums and documentaries. Life-size reconstructions, such as the one displayed at the Museo Carmen Funes in Neuquén, Argentina, rely heavily on 3D modeling. Artists and scientists collaborate to ensure that muscles, skin, and posture align with the latest research. These reconstructions are not static guesses. They are updated as new scans and models refine our understanding. In this way, every new technological tool directly reshapes how the public sees these giants. Perhaps the most exciting frontier is the use of digital motion simulations. By animating reconstructed skeletons with virtual muscles and joints, paleontologists can test walking speeds, turning radius, and hunting motions. One study compared the gait of Giganotosaurus to that of modern large animals, suggesting that despite its size, it could maintain surprising agility. Such simulations bring us closer to answering long-standing questions. Could it run down prey? Could it pivot quickly? How did it deliver its lethal strikes? Another important use of technology that isn't often mentioned is in bone histology. Researchers use powerful telescopes and imaging software to carefully look at growth rings in bone. These rings show not only how old the bone is, but also how it grows and stresses during different times of the year. When put together with CT data, these new ideas give us a full picture of Giganotosaurus as a live animal, not just a skeleton. Technology even extends to sound. By reconstructing nasal cavities and skull resonating chambers, scientists can simulate what Giganotosaurus may have sounded like. Early tests suggest it may have produced deep, resonant calls, more like rumbling thunder than roaring lions. While speculative, these simulations help us imagine its presence in life, a predator not only seen but also heard across the floodplains of Patagonia. Extinction before the end. The 66-million-year-old asteroid impact that killed off the Tyrannosaurus rex and Triceratops is what most people think of when they hear the word extinction. Giganotosaurus never got that far though. That was about 97 million years ago, which is about 30 million years before the disaster that killed off the last dinosaurs that were not birds. The fact that it disappeared so quickly begs the question, why did one of the biggest beasts ever live disappear so quickly? The fossil record gives us important clues. Giganotosaurus belonged to the Carcharodontosaurid family, a group of giant predators that thrived across South America, Africa, and parts of Europe during the mid-Cretaceous. Yet by the late Cretaceous, they were gone, replaced by abelisaurids in the southern continents and tyrannosaurids in the north. This turnover suggests a deeper ecological shift, one that reshaped predator hierarchies worldwide. One leading theory points to climate and environmental change. Around 100 to 90 million years ago, global sea levels rose dramatically. Vast inland seas expanded, flooding lowland habitats and fragmenting ecosystems. In South America, the Neuquén Basin, where Giganotosaurus lived, experienced cycles of flooding and drying that may have disrupted sauropod populations. Since Giganotosaurus relied heavily on giant sauropods like Argentinosaurus for food, any decline in these prey species would have had cascading effects. If the prey disappeared or moved to new regions, predators that specialized in hunting them may have been left vulnerable. There may have been other predators around, which was another issue. During this time, abelisaurids like Carnotaurus were becoming the most common predators in South America. Abelisaurids were fast, stocky, and very successful, even though they were much smaller than Giganotosaurus. Their short, bulldog-like heads and strong necks suggest a different way of hunting, one that focused on medium-sized food, which may have been easier to find as the populations of giant sauropods changed. Abelisaurids lived longer than Carcharodontosaurids, right up until they were wiped out by an asteroid. This shows that being able to change and eat differently may have been more important than size. There is also the possibility of evolutionary overspecialization. Giganotosaurus and its kin were finely tuned to hunt the largest herbivores of their world. But being specialized can be risky. If the environment changes or prey becomes scarce, specialists struggle to adapt. T-Rex, by contrast, was more of a generalist, capable of taking down armored herbivores like Triceratops and also scavenging carcasses. Giganotosaurus's slicing teeth were perfect for soft-bodied sauropods, but less efficient for bone-crunching versatility. In an unstable ecosystem, this specialization may have spelled doom. The study of isotopes in preserved teeth is a secret gem in the field of research. Paleontologists can figure out some things about the Giganotosaurus's diet and surroundings by looking at the chemical marks that have been kept in its teeth. These studies show that it relied on sauropods a lot, which supports the idea that its fate was linked to theirs. When titanosaurs went extinct in some areas, the animals that ate them also went extinct. It's also possible that reproductive strategy played a role. Large predators require longer times to reach maturity, and Giganotosaurus may have been vulnerable to population crashes during environmental stress. If food shortages or climate shifts reduce survival rates among juveniles, populations could decline rapidly. Abelisaurids, being smaller and potentially reaching maturity faster, may have had an advantage in fluctuating conditions. The disappearance of Giganotosaurus and its relatives marked the end of one chapter in South America's predator story. After their extinction, abelisaurids filled the role of apex predators, though none ever reached the sheer size of Giganotosaurus. In this sense, the extinction of Carcharodontosaurids was not a sudden catastrophe, but a slow fade, a gradual decline driven by environmental shifts and ecological competition. Legacy of a forgotten giant. In the minds of most people, the Giganotosaurus has always been less important than the Tyrannosaurus rex. For more than 100 years, the T-Rex was a big part of pop culture. It was in movies, shows, and museums all over the world. Giganotosaurus, on the other hand, stayed a fairly rare word that was only known by paleontologists and dinosaur fans. But it is remembered for a lot more than just being the dinosaur that fought T-Rex. It shows a different part of evolution, the unique past of South America, and how science keeps finding giants we didn't know about. One of its most enduring legacies is how it reshaped our understanding of predator diversity. Before Giganotosaurus was discovered, the narrative of dinosaur evolution often centered around North America, with T-Rex as the inevitable apex. But the 1993 discovery of Giganotosaurus in Patagonia changed that story. Suddenly, paleontologists realized that the southern continents were home to their own predator dynasties just as impressive, and in some cases even larger, than those of the north. It proved that evolution had produced multiple kings, each ruling separate ecosystems with different strategies. The discovery also helped shine a spotlight on Argentine paleontology. South America had long been overshadowed by fossil finds from the United States, Canada, and Mongolia. Giganotosaurus's fame put Patagonia on the global paleontological map. Since then, Argentina has become known as a treasure trove of giant dinosaurs, from Argentinosaurus to Mapusaurus. Local museums, such as the Museo Carmen Funes, proudly display reconstructions of Giganotosaurus, making it not only a scientific icon, but also a source of cultural pride. In terms of scientific legacy, Giganotosaurus is a case study in specialization. Its steak knife teeth, lighter skull, and speed-oriented body all tell a story about how predators adapt to their prey. Unlike T-Rex, which evolved bone-crushing jaws to deal with armored ceratopsians and ankylosaurs, Giganotosaurus was tailored for hunting massive, unarmored titanosaurs. Its legacy reminds us that there isn't one blueprint for being a successful predator. Different environments create different giants, each shaped by its own evolutionary pressures. Another hidden gem of its legacy is how it has influenced our view of dinosaur behavior. The discovery of Mapusaurus bone beds, closely related to Giganotosaurus, suggested the possibility of pack hunting. Even though direct evidence for group hunting in Giganotosaurus remains uncertain, the idea opened new debates about social behavior in large theropods. This shifted paleontology from viewing apex predators as purely solitary hunters to considering the possibility of cooperation and complex interactions. Its legacy also lies in what it teaches about extinction and survival. Giganotosaurus disappeared nearly 30 million years before the asteroid impact, a reminder that even the most powerful animals are vulnerable to environmental change. Its story highlights the dangers of overspecialization. Being perfectly adapted to one ecosystem can make survival impossible when that ecosystem shifts. In this way, Giganotosaurus's legacy extends beyond dinosaurs. It speaks to the broader truth of life on Earth. Adaptability, not size or strength, is the ultimate key to survival. Modern science keeps adding to what it has already done. More is being learned about how it lived, killed, and grew, thanks to CT scans, biomechanical models, and isotopic analysis. With each new piece of technology, Giganotosaurus stops being a vague foe to T-Rex and starts to be seen as a real, fully formed killer with its own personality. There are still a lot of unknowns about its skeleton, but that's what makes people curious. And that's what geology is all about. Giganotosaurus may have vanished millions of years before T-Rex, but its story still reshapes everything we thought we knew about the age of giants. Which predator do you think truly deserves the crown? The bone-crushing king of the north or the flesh-slicing titan of the south? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you never miss more incredible journeys into the prehistoric past.